It's funny, isn't it? You start out thinking the prize is the money, then maybe the recognition, then maybe the vindication. But none of those were it. Not really. The real prize was silence. Not the empty, aching kind, but the kind you earn, the kind that lives in your bones and says, you did the right thing even when no one clapped. I didn't buy a mansion, didn't move to LA, didn't suddenly start dressing like a tech billionaire with a god complex. I bought a little house outside the city. Nothing special. One story, big windows, a garden in the back where light spills in every morning like forgiveness. I wake up without an alarm, make tea, sometimes paint, sometimes write, sometimes just breathe. There's no applause here, no proving, no one waiting to compare me to someone else. It's quiet, and I love it here. I took part of my winnings and bought the house I grew up in. Yeah, that house. The one where Dylan got celebrated and I got scratched off tickets. The one where I learned to make myself small in every room. I didn't buy it out of spite. I bought it because I wanted to change the narrative. I turned it into a creative hub for kids who grew up feeling invisible. Free classes, art supplies, mentors. Every room painted in colors no one told me I could use. On the door a plaque reads, "You are seen." And when I walk through it now, it doesn't feel haunted. It feels reclaimed. Sometimes people ask if I ever talk to my family again. The short answer? No. The long answer? I tried once. I sent my mom a letter, told her I forgave her even if she never apologized. She didn't reply. That's okay, not every chapter gets an ending, some just stop mid-sentence. But if you're reading this, if you've ever been the forgotten one, the quiet one, the one passed over, laughed at, pushed aside, I see you. I know what it's like to hold rage in one hand and hope in the other, wondering which will keep you warmer. And I'll tell you this, hope doesn't always come with a spotlight. Sometimes it shows up quietly, in the form of a $2 ticket that nobody meant to matter. And sometimes it leads you exactly where you were meant to be. If this story made something stir inside you, tell me. Not for the clicks, not for the views, but because maybe your story's next. And if it is, I hope you win, whatever winning means to you. Mom emailed me an article about smart ways to invest with a passive-aggressive subject line. Thought you might like this. Dylan reached out a week later, said we should grab a drink sometime, like old times. There were no "I'm proud of you" messages, no "we were wrong," no questions. That was what hit me hardest. Not that they wanted to reconnect, but that they never asked what I went through. They didn't ask how I'd managed my money, didn't ask how I'd built my company, didn't ask how it felt, holding their silence for so many years. Didn't ask if I'd been okay all that time. Just silence, followed by requests dressed up as conversations. Your father's retirement plan got messed up. Not that we need anything, but I've been thinking of restarting the business. Could use a small investor. Becca's thinking of starting a lifestyle brand. You're kind of in that world, right? They didn't know that every polite smile I sent back was a no. Not out of pettiness, not even out of pride, but because I had finally realized something no jackpot could buy. I wasn't theirs to define anymore. And I wasn't going to fund the parts of them that never invested in me. Still, there were moments, hard ones, lonely ones. Because the truth is, winning doesn't fill the empty spaces, it just makes them echo louder. Sometimes I'd scroll through my camera roll and stop at old photos, me and Dylan as kids, both in superhero pajamas, me with cake on my face at age 6, Dad holding my hand on the first day of school. They weren't villains, they were just human. Flawed, tired, busy loving someone else louder than they loved me. And maybe, if they had ever once asked, "Are you happy? Do you feel loved? Is there something you want us to see?" I might have answered, but they didn't, and that silence gave me clarity. I stopped replying to their messages, blocked their numbers, not out of hate but for peace. Changed my address, hired a new assistant, kept building. And one morning I woke up, made coffee, and realized I didn't feel guilty anymore. I didn't owe anyone an explanation for the life I was building. Not them. Not anyone. And for the first time in my life, my quiet wasn't sadness. It was sovereignty. "I wanted to thank you all," I said finally. "Thank us," my mom repeated. "For coming, for raising me, for everything really." I sipped. "You gave Dylan a house. You gave me a lottery ticket, and in some strange way, you gave me this." They didn't speak, but I saw the realization begin to settle across their faces like fog over a lake. A dawning horror mixed with disbelief. "You're the one," Dylan whispered. "The one who—" "Yeah," I said. "That was my number." There was a pause. Then Dad let out a short, sharp laugh. "Well, I'll be damned." Becca stared. "So you're rich now?" I didn't answer. I didn't need to. The food arrived, 5 courses of art on a plate. No one touched theirs at first. Too many questions, too many rewrites of the story they thought they knew. Mom looked down, then up. "Why didn't you tell us?" "Because you wouldn't have cared. Because you only love what you understand. Because silence was the only power I ever had around you." But I didn't say any of that. Instead I said, "I needed to build something for me, without your expectations, without your ceilings." They didn't respond. Not really. They chewed slowly, drank nervously, and tried to pretend this was just dinner. But I knew, this was a reckoning. When the check came, it didn't come. The waiter simply smiled and said, "It's taken care of." My family blinked. They'd never dined somewhere that quiet power paid for things in silence. As we got up, Mom touched my arm. Not gripping, just touching. A question in her fingers she didn't know how to ask. "You look happy," she said. It wasn't a compliment. It was a curiosity. "I am," I replied. "Finally." And then I walked out first. After that night I didn't hear from them for 3 weeks. No calls, no awkward texts, no cryptic Facebook likes. And in a way, that silence said everything. I think they needed time to rewire the narrative. I wasn't the quiet one anymore. I wasn't the invisible background character they'd cast me as all my life. Now I was something unfamiliar. And people rarely welcome the unfamiliar without suspicion. The news started to spread. An anonymous lottery winner had been quietly funding local nonprofits, investing in youth creative programs, and backing small businesses owned by women and immigrants. I didn't claim credit. Not publicly. But I started getting the calls anyway. "Just checking in," my dad texted, like we were college buddies. It started with an envelope, cream-colored, thick as cardstock, with their names printed in silver ink. No return address, no phone number, just a time, a place, and one single line at the bottom. "Come hungry, dress well." I sent one to each of them, Mom, Dad, Dylan, and Becca. No plus ones, no group text, just that formal, almost impersonal invitation tucked into their mailboxes like a message from a universe they didn't believe in anymore. The location? A high-end fusion restaurant downtown. The kind of place that didn't take walk-ins, had a 6-month wait list, and didn't list prices on the menu. I knew because I owned a quiet stake in it, through one of my LLCs, through one of the shadows I now called home. The reservation was under a pseudonym, but when the night came, I walked in as myself. No hoodie, no sunglasses, no fear. Just me, in a black suit, clean sneakers, and a look that said you don't know me anymore. And that's okay. They arrived separately, of course. Dylan first, checking his reflection in the glass. He looked tired, older. The confidence he used to wear like cologne had faded into something more anxious. Becca came next, holding his arm tightly like it might keep him from falling apart. Then my parents. Mom's limp from her surgery was more pronounced than I remembered. Dad's hair was whiter, thinner. They looked around the restaurant like tourists in a museum. They didn't see me right away. I let them sit, let them glance at the menu and whisper confused questions to each other. I let them wonder why the waiter brought them complimentary champagne. Then I stood, walked slowly toward the table, stopped just short of the candlelight. "Hey," I said softly. 4 heads turned, 4 jaws slackened. Dylan squinted like I was a magic trick. Mom blinked twice. Dad actually said, "What the hell?" I smiled. "Nice to see you too." The silence was thick. Becca broke it first. "You look different." I nodded. "Success has a skincare routine." No one laughed. I didn't expect them to. I took the seat at the head of the table, the one they'd left empty, and the waiter poured my glass without a word. He knew. Everyone in this place did, but they were professionals, paid to know secrets and keep them. That same day I hired a lawyer, 2 days later, a financial advisor. By the end of the week I had 5 LLCs, 3 burner phones, and a spreadsheet titled Operation Quiet Storm. I was no longer just a freelancer scraping by, I was a ghost-backed empire in the making. The first thing I did was rent an office space. Small, windowless, nothing flashy. It sat behind a laundromat and smelled vaguely of bleach and hope. That was enough for me. I started building the agency I'd always dreamed of. Not a marketing firm for billion-dollar brands, but a launchpad for the ones like me. Underdogs, Indie artists, women-owned businesses, creatives who had brilliant ideas but no one betting on them. I used aliases in every email, hired anonymously, paid generously. It felt like I was weaving a web of second chances, except this time, I was the spider. Ironically, as I started rising, my family started slipping. I heard from a cousin that Dylan and Becca were having house problems. Turns out the market tanked right after their mortgage ballooned, and the gifted house wasn't so gifted when the taxes came due. Mom had knee surgery, no insurance, Dad's small business was hit hard in a downturn. They didn't ask me for help. They didn't even call. I don't know if it was pride or habit. But I watched from a distance as the pillars of my family began to wobble. And here's the thing. I didn't feel joy about it. I thought I would. I thought I'd grin and say, "Serves you right." But I didn't. What I felt was detached, like watching a house collapse that you were never invited to live in. At the same time, my house, my invisible empire, was thriving. I hired interns from community colleges, gave bonuses without requiring degrees, helped a local artist design a book cover that led to her first bestseller. I started sleeping through the night again. I smiled without flinching. Still, I didn't post, didn't show off, didn't even upgrade my phone. Because this wasn't about being seen anymore. It was about being in control. And yet, every now and then I'd catch myself wondering, would they be proud of me now? I hated that thought. I hated that they still lived rent-free in some corner of my brain. But the truth? They weren't just my family. They were the reason I built a fortress instead of a garden. And deep down, I knew. Eventually I'd have to face them, not for revenge, for closure. I didn't scream, I didn't jump up and down, there was no music swelling in the background, no montage of me dancing around in celebration. I just sat there, bowl of cold pasta in one hand, ticket in the other, and a single word in my mouth. No, this wasn't happening. No, it couldn't be real. No, this was a glitch. A scam. A dream. I must have checked a dozen different sites, read every digit 3 times over. And when it finally sank in, I cried. Not the joyful kind of crying either. This was a cracked dam. This was every ignored birthday, every passed-over compliment, every time I told myself it's fine when it wasn't, flooding out of me all at once. I didn't cry because I was rich. I cried because for the first time in my life I had something they couldn't ignore, not something they gave me, something that chose me. Once the crying stopped, the second wave hit. Fear. What now? I wasn't stupid. I knew what lottery stories looked like, winners going broke, families imploding, people showing up at your door pretending to be your long-lost cousin from Cleveland. I didn't want any of that. So, I did what I always do. I made a list. It wasn't about what I'd buy, it was about who I'd become. I wrote down 5 words. Don't let this shrink you. That was the real fear, that I'd become the same version of me just with more expensive problems. So I made a choice that night. Somewhere between spaghetti bite number 5 and number 7. I wouldn't spend a dime. Not yet. Not until I knew how to turn this win into something that would finally truly mean something. It wasn't just about teaching my family a lesson, it was about teaching me what I was worth, and proving, once and for all, that their spotlight was never the only light in the room. I didn't tell a soul, not my roommate, not my childhood best friend, not even the barista at the corner cafe who knew my name and oat milk order by heart. For the first time in my life, I had power, and I wasn't going to waste it chasing attention. I walked into the lottery office the following Tuesday with a hoodie over my head, sunglasses on my face, and an appointment under a fake name. I'd read enough horror stories to know better than to walk in wide-eyed and smiling like I'd won the emotional lottery too. I opted for the lump sum. $98 million after taxes. That's the part they don't tell you. You don't walk away with everything, but let me be clear, I still walked away with everything I needed. To them, I was safe to overlook. I wouldn't cause a scene, wouldn't spiral. I would just absorb the slight, nod politely, and move on. And they were right, for a long time. But something about that lottery ticket snapped the thread. That night, after they gave Dylan a house and gave me a number, I stared at the ceiling until morning. I thought about all the birthdays where I watched them fawn over my brother's job promotions while I sat next to a slice of melting cake. I thought about the time Dylan crashed the family car, and they still let him drive before me. I thought about the photo albums with pages and pages of him, and just a handful of me, often blurry, often off-center. And still, some small, flickering part of me wanted them to care, to ask how I was doing, to believe in what I was building, even if they didn't understand it. But I realized something that night, as the sky turned from indigo to gray. They were never going to see me. So I would build something they couldn't ignore. Not out of spite, not anymore, out of necessity, out of truth. And the craziest part? I didn't even know yet that the numbers on that stupid piece of paper were about to change everything. I kept the ticket in my desk drawer, not framed, not pinned up like a vision board wish, just tucked beneath a stack of unpaid utility bills and a post-it note that said, "Remember who TF you are." I didn't look at it for 3 days. Not because I forgot, trust me, I never forgot. But because I didn't want it to be worthless. That ticket had somehow become a metaphor for every last drop of hope I hadn't yet choked down. If I scratched it and it was a bust, then fine. I'd finally let go of that last childish part of me that still thought the universe might give me something. But on the 4th night, I couldn't take it anymore. It was 2:08 a.m. I remember that exactly because the glow of my microwave clock was the only light in the apartment, casting long shadows across the pile of laundry I hadn't touched in a week. I was eating cold spaghetti with a spoon, don't judge me, and I pulled the ticket out like it was radioactive. My hands were sweating, my heart was somehow louder than the fridge. I didn't scratch it, I just stared at the numbers. 6 of them. 6, 14, 28, 33, 41, 56. Then I Googled Powerball results, 134 million jackpot drawing date last Saturday. And there they were, every single number, exactly the same. Not enough for a house, not enough for belief, just enough for a joke. And maybe it was stupid, but as I sat there in the silence, I made a vow. If this ticket is worthless, I'm done. Done chasing their approval. Done pretending that maybe one day they'd see me. But if it's not, then I would show them all. Not with shouting or speeches or revenge parties. I would let success speak. I would teach them the only way I knew how, and I would never, ever apologize for winning. You'd think that moment, the house, the ticket, was the beginning. But the truth is, it was just a symptom. The disease had been growing in our family for years. Growing up, I was always next to Dylan. Never quite with him. Never really after him either, because that would have implied I was in the same race. But no, Dylan ran a spotlighted track, and I was somewhere off-road, dodging branches and potholes, while everyone else clapped for him at the finish line. He was the golden boy, captain of the soccer team, decent grades, always knew what to say in front of the relatives. I remember once, in 8th grade, I won 2nd place in a state-level art competition. Something I poured hours into, painting under the weak light of my bedroom desk lamp. And when I showed it to Mom, she smiled politely and said, "That's nice, honey. Did Dylan help with it?" Dylan didn't even own a paintbrush. I wasn't rebellious, not in the way that makes for good teenage movie scripts. I didn't sneak out, didn't smoke, didn't fail classes. I did what I was told. I got A's, I learned to cook. I even walked the dog when it wasn't mine. But it was like I was wallpaper, part of the house but never really seen. By the time I hit my 20s, I had dreams I didn't tell them about, like starting a creative agency for indie brands. I had sketchbooks filled with branding ideas, websites mapped out in messy Sharpie lines, slogans circled and underlined twice. I knew how to build things, I knew how to design stories, but in my family's eyes, I was still just the quiet one who did something on the computer. At one Thanksgiving dinner, I tried to explain my freelance projects, how I helped a local cafe triple its foot traffic through design and social media. My dad looked up from his plate and said, "So, you do ads?" That was the end of that conversation. I'm not saying they hated me, they didn't. They just didn't invest. Not in me, not in my dreams. They say moments like this don't define you. But that day, it did. It was a warm Sunday afternoon, the kind where the air gets stuck between summer and fall, too hot for sweaters, but cool enough for quiet tension to hang in the corners of a living room. We were all there, crammed into the house I used to call home. Mom, Dad, my older brother Dylan, his fiancée Becca, and me, the afterthought. They said it was just a small engagement gathering. But the wine was imported, the appetizers were catered, and my mom was wearing the necklace she only took out for special occasions. I knew something was coming, I just didn't know it would land so hard. We had just finished the toast. Dad stood, smiling proudly, lifting his glass high. To Dylan and Becca, he said, and the beautiful life they're about to start. We're so proud of you, son. So we wanted to give you both something special. I felt it before I saw it, Mom clutching an envelope like it held something sacred. She handed it to Dylan, who opened it with a grin that had always come easier to him than it ever did to me. Inside, a deed. A house deed. A 2-bedroom cottage in Brookside, newly renovated. A literal starter home. There was cheering. Tears, a few gasps, and then like a lazy afterthought my mother turned to me. Oh, and sweetheart, we got you something too. She reached into her purse and pulled out a lottery ticket. I swear to God, a damn scratch-off. Who knows, she said, chuckling. Maybe you'll be the lucky one, huh? Everyone laughed. I smiled, but I felt something crack behind my ribs. I looked down at the ticket. $2 quick pick, numbers already printed. No even choice in that. I wanted to say something. Anything. But I've been trained my whole life to not make scenes, to be the good one, the quiet one, the one who doesn't take up space. So I laughed. A little. Swallowed everything else. I even said thank you, and then I left early, said I had a thing. Truth is, I just didn't want to cry in their bathroom. Later that night, sitting on the floor of my apartment, the same one with peeling paint, paper-thin walls, and a broken heater, I stared at the ticket. I didn't scratch it, I didn't check the numbers. I just held it in my palm. That damn piece of paper felt like everything they'd ever thought of me.